Hey guys, how you doing? It's a slightly warmer day here in almost Brisbane. I'm about 20 minutes south of Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. So t-shirt on today. It's great instead of the usual hoodie. Um, there's been so much talk lately about steroids and Jiu Jitsu, and so I thought I'd just chime in with my experiences, right? So um, when I was 19 or so, 19, 20, 19. Um, I was working as a personal trainer in Christchurch in New Zealand, and every few months, as part of this, I'm pretty sure it's part of the Fitness Leader Network. It might have been part of the New Zealand Sports Medicine Federation or whatever they were called. Anyway, there was a bunch of different associations that I was involved with for strength and conditioning and fitness orientated qualifications and stuff. So every few months we would have a module on a particular subject, and this particular subject was performance enhancing drugs and sport and stuff like that. So I was pretty interested in that. And so I went along, and it was the usual rah, 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 PowerPoint stuff and things like that. But then the guy who was running it said something that was kind of bizarre. And he goes, the main benefit of steroids is placebo effect. So just the fact that you think that you're taking them is going to enhance you, whether it's psychologically or physiologically or whatever. And I was like, at the time, I wish I could remember the guy's name. At the time, I was training with a junior Mr. World, right? And he was like, obviously, like 10 times my size. I was like 88 kilos. I'm guessing around 6 or 7% body fat, something like that. And, like he and I trained together religiously, I mean, almost every day, if not every day. And, like he was huge to say the least. He was like absolutely enormous, right? And, obviously he and I discussed the topic, and I knew that he was taking steroids and stuff like that. So when this guy said this, I was like, look, that's rubbish. I train with this guy. He's juiced to the gills. We train together almost every day. I do not look like him, right? I'm hyper motivated. I train just as hard, but there's an enormous benefit to it. Anyway, the guy debated me a little bit, so I said, all right. I took my shirt off in the middle of the seminar, and I said, look, this is me. I'm like 88 kilos. I'm going to get juiced up. Knowing that there was, I think it was in like another 3 months, there was another module, that we would all be at again, right? So I said, I'll see you all then, right? And I'm going to go get juiced up, right? So it was just to prove a point. So I went to see my training partner. He put me in touch with this doctor who like jabbed me in the calf and the butt and all over myself like almost every week. And then a few months later, we went back to the next module, and I didn't have to take my shirt off for the benefits to be seen. Like I was 102, 103 kilos or something. I was just like jacked, like it had been horrible, like my whole temperament changed. I got the whole roid rage thing. Broke up with my girlfriend. Like I was doing security work at the time. I was in like heaps more fights, because usually when I'm on the door, I'm pretty chilled, pretty laid back. I was in fights all the time, and I was always kind of angry, and it was a horrible feeling. And that's my only personal experience. I've it was for a couple of months to prove a point, but it was staggering what happened to me physiologically, emotionally. It was like, it scared the hell out of me. Like I would never want to do that stuff again. I know technology's different these days. The drugs are way different. Half of the guys over 50 these days are all on TRT, and they've got all sorts of stuff that they can go to the doctor and get because their testosterone's low or some other stuff, right? And so that's my own personal experience, right? In Jiu Jitsu, I have had a number of world champions come and train at my gym in Melbourne for a while, and the reports from the students, I was overseas at the time, so I had some guys running my gym who were like current world champions. Anyway, so when I got back, obviously my students told me about what had been going on. I mean, these guys were drilling for like 8-9 hours a day. They were sticking themselves with needles constantly because my students would see it, and they told me, I don't hold it against them, like whatever, I'm not competing against them, I don't care. But I think it's super unfair, right? And I mean, these are lightweight guys. They're not big dudes. So like when you look at like Mikey Metamucci and stuff like this, he's got like 3% body fat, right? And he's drilling 12 hours a day, and he's running for like 10K every morning. Like, just because you're not hugely muscled doesn't mean that you're not on something, yeah? And it's clear that he is. Everyone's always talking about it now, right? And, you can literally just look at their output and you can tell if something's unnatural, yeah? So yesterday I was watching the really good interview with Mighty Mouse and Cade Ruotolo, and I really like the Ruotolo brothers, right? I like their attitude to Jiu Jitsu. I like the fact they've got a nicely balanced life. They've clearly got a good family life, and they're exceptional at what they do. They're incredibly dedicated, but the father has, and I'm sure that like the sons are a product of the father, where he's got a nice balanced lifestyle between like their surfing and their skating and their jiu-jitsu and their friendship, and it's not all just like about one thing, And I understand Mikey has some stuff, whatever it is, call it autism or whatever. There's something. He's probably defined it at some stage, but whatever it is. Train a lot of autistic and ADHD kids myself. I don't kind of like pigeonhole them because, again, it's called a spectrum for a reason, right? Is that like, I've probably got a tinge of something, right? I have, exceptional sensitivity to colors and shapes and contrast, and I'm very sensitive to certain things and stuff like that. I like to be very organized and a little bit of a control freak, I guess. But again, whether that's a product of my environment growing up, which was incredibly chaotic, and then I developed these kind of attributes as a kind of survival mechanism. So it's really common that like OCD type behavior will kick in when I'm really stressed, and I start lining up things on the table and that's just a form of you trying to get control of your world when other aspects of your world are a little out of control. So I understand all that. I'm kind of interested in that stuff anyway, as you guys know. But you look at Cyborg when he's competing at the Worlds, look back like 5 years ago when he was at his peak or whatever, just shredded, jacked, huge. Andre Guevara, same thing. His shoulders are like cannonballs, like shredded, huge. Like it's really obvious these guys are juiced up. And Gordon Ryan, that it's super obvious. He doesn't even deny it. But then the question has to, somebody raised the other day because they were talking about the whole CJI thing and Abu Dhabi and all this stuff and drugs in the sport. And it was kind of a silly comment because like, well, maybe when the sport gets big enough and there's enough money in it, then we can get the drug testing to catch all the cheats. I'm like, well, no, it's not. It doesn't happen that way. All that happens is that the more money there is in the sport, the more money the athletes get, the more money that the athletes can invest and are invested in the athletes to cheat, to be able to cheat, right? They'll have chemists on board who will tell, and doctors who will tell them exactly the whole Lance Armstrong thing, right? And like the drug testing is always following the prevalence of the drugs. It's always a chasing game. It's never a leading game. So I've had friends who work for, I don't know if it was Asada back then, but they were testing the likes of Ian Thorpe and a lot of top Australian athletes all over the world. And I got to hear a little bit about it. And they're like, well, we know everybody's cheating. We just can't prove it because the technology that the athletes have available to them to mask the drug taking, the technology of that is ahead of our testing technology, and we have to let them know where we can, even if they know, like there's windows, like you've got in season and out season and stuff like this. But really smart athletes have, and if there's a lot of money surrounding them, then like the Tour de France is no cleaner than it ever has been. It's absolute rubbish. As an ex-professional cyclist myself, when I'd go out training with guys who are not even like world level athletes, they're competing for national honours on the road. And as a mountain biker, I'd be training with those guys a lot. And then 8 weeks before the season, untouchable, 10 weeks out, just gone. And it's not a change in their training because, it's just incredible what it can do. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And any one of you who has seen Icarus, which is an incredible documentary, if you want to know the depth of drug taking and manipulation and everything on a international, world, national, state, local scene, watch that documentary. It's probably the world's most famous sports documentary, and definitely the world's most famous drug-orientated documentary. And it shed a lot of light on, like, in Russia, the kids are getting jabbed by their parents because everybody wants out of poverty. Everybody wants to be successful. If they can get out of poverty and they can be seen, then the government will come along and support them, right? So, it almost doesn't matter what the sport is. If there's financial gain to be had, there's going to be drugs in the sport. I don't see any real benefit of a lot of drug testing. It's very expensive and it's really not going to do much. The organisations themselves will feel the necessity to have to employ it because if they don't, there's public outrage. And from a legal point of view, you imagine if, Mark Hunt tried that, right? Mark Hunt tried to take the UFC to court because they knew that Brock Lesnar was juiced to the gills and fought Mark. Mark lost, and Mark, being a bit butthurt, has gone on a huge tirade to try and sue the UFC, right? But all it would take is for an athlete to be seriously injured or killed or damaged in some way, and if you could prove that the body controlling it was negligent, then you would have a case, But again, looking at the UFC, there was a huge amount of money and resources behind the UFC. There was almost no chance that Mark was going to win. He did his best, but you've just got to realize that there's a huge amount of money invested in these athletes. The sponsors behind them will be pumping money in, I'm sure, because they want their brands out there on the top athletes. But if you look at steroid use and performance enhancing use in America, for example, high school athletes are juiced to the gills. They're all trying to get in the NBA. They're all trying to get in the, the NFL and stuff like this. And it starts young, really young now. And the fact that Mika Gaval was getting popped when he was 17 or something like this, it shows just how driven, and it's not even just the athletes. If Mika's popping for roids, do you think that his dad has not got something to do with that? Of course, right? His dad is clearly juiced to the gills. So I don't think there's any way to stop it. I think it's really unfair for all the clean athletes out there who do have a moral compass and who are not prepared to damage their body. There's a reason why Gordon's body has just cacked itself. If you're juicing yourself to the gills and having to force feed yourself as well as train bloody 12 hours a day, whatever he does, and then being in the DDS, having to train 365 days a year, it's not smart. It's not intelligent. And there's going to be repercussions on your health for sure. So if you're not prepared to do that, if you're not prepared to take performance enhancing drugs because your attitude to Jiu Jitsu or fighting is more, you know, traditional and Puritan, then it's going to be a tough battle. And when the Ruotolos were talking to Mike yesterday, and he's like, how often do you train? And they're like, you know, we'll train like 3 or 4 times a week, maybe a fifth if we're really in a really, really super driven camp, you know. And these are, you know, arguably some of the very best grapplers in the world. So I always tell my students, like, white belts train like twice a week for like the first 6 months or even the first year, a couple of times a week, maybe 3 times. If they come in as an athlete already and they've, you know, they don't have carrying many injuries, then yeah, sure, like 2 or 3 times a week, but no more. And then once they've been on the mat for a while, if they wanted to pick up a 4th class, you know, then I would encourage them to make one of those classes like just drilling the whole time, you know, maybe a little bit of light flow rolling or stuff like that. But there's no real need because if you're going to get on the mat 5-6 days a week, then where are you fitting in your weight training? Where are you fitting in your yoga? Where are you fitting in your recovery days? Where are you fitting in all the other stuff that goes into being a balanced athlete? And I think a lot of kids, especially like late teens, and I saw this with my academy in Melbourne, where I was very close to Melbourne University. So I had a lot of overseas students, a lot of them Asian, but a lot of overseas students who would arrive in Melbourne, for example. They don't have any friends or family in the city. They're just there to study. And so when they start thinking about where they could meet friends and stuff, they look up, they think about what their interests are. Maybe they're curious about jiu-jitsu. They might have trained a little bit of judo or something back home. And they would come to the academy immediately. They find like a family-orientated vibe and culture there. They find a whole lot of, like, you know, I'm not being racist, there were a lot of Asians. And so, like, they would find a lot of friends that were like them from similar countries and similar backgrounds. And my academy was in Chinatown, so, you know, so they would find this family, you know, and they would want to connect with them every day because they're used to having their family around them, you know, they're very family-orientated cultures. So, you know, like they wouldn't want to take a day off training. You know, we weren't open Sundays, and so they would be there like sometimes twice a day, but every day, Monday to Saturday, and I'd be trying to encourage them to train less. But for them, it wasn't even about the training, and they're not trying to win world titles or do any of that stuff. It's just like that's the place where they meet their friends, and that's the place where they hang out and socialize because they weren't big drinkers or anything like that. And I see a similar culture when I was in Brazil, because I spent probably 3 or 4 months there every year for a long time. So the academy is like a meeting place for a lot of people, especially the guys who are like over 40, for example. They'll take their gear to work. They might train at lunchtime, but a lot of the guys will come after work. They don't go to the pub. Drinking's not a very big culture there. And so, like, going to the academy is like a place for them to hang out and meet and socialize. And there was no pressure for them to even join in the class. If they had a gi on, they could sit on the side of the mat and just hang out. As long as they didn't disrupt the class, they just hang out and chill out. They were there around their friends. And you know, I mean, if the training was hard, then they'd be watching the guys, yeah, come on. They'd be encouraging their friends to train hard between rounds or towards the end of the sparring. You know, then they'll all sit down, they have a bit of a chat and stuff like this. And there's just no pressure to like have to join in the class, or you have to fight, you have to roll. You have to roll, you know. And I think one of the things and I encourage it at my place, is communication and talking about things. You know, we'll do like a 1-hour class, everybody bows out. Because, I mean, some of the beginners don't want to roll, for example, so they can go home, or they can stay and watch, or they can stay and drill, yeah, while the time training's going on. And I encourage people to discuss things and try and solve problems and stuff like that. Anyway, I digress. So I don't think there's going to be any change to the steroid taking or performance enhancing drug taking as the sport evolves, if there's more money and there's more sponsors, then there's just going to be more drug taking because the rewards are greater. The science behind it and the sponsors behind it and the money supporting it is going to be even bigger. So there's even less chance of people getting caught because they're going to be so far ahead of the drug testing. I don't think there is a solution to it. You can't just go, okay, there's been talk about this, like, what were they calling it? Rogan was mentioning it the other day, where they're thinking of having Olympics where you can take whatever you want. Yeah, right? And, well, that's great. But, like, it's also like bodybuilding where you can't have, like, a natural section because all those guys will be juicing too, right? It's like, yeah, like there's just no way around it. If there's money involved, there's going to be performance enhancing drugs, and yeah, you might as well just, I mean, like I said, from a legal point of view, they probably aren't allowed to, like, just allow drug taking unless, I don't know. I don't know what the legal ramifications would be if you said, we're going to allow this, but it's illegal publicly and legally. So you might have to get everybody to have their doctor's script with them to allow them to take all the drugs that they're taking to be able to compete in your organization. And if somebody dies from some complication, then you're not liable. Like, that's the fuzzy area. That's why I don't think that the organizations are doing the drug testing to try and clean up the sport. That's what they'll say, but it's BS, right? They're doing it because legally they have to. Yeah, they have to. Anyway, those are my experiences. And if you have any experiences, if you're an over 40-year-old guy and you've tried TRT or are trying it, jump in the comments and let us know your experiences. I have some friends who, like, ride mountain bikes. They're in their, like, late 40s, early 50s. And, they're not doing it for any, like, performance enhancing benefits. They don't compete in anything. They literally just did it because they went to the doctor. They were feeling terrible. Their testosterone was a bit low for a number of different reasons. Probably shitty diet. They don't train enough. They don't look after themselves. All the rest. But whatever. They go get a few jabs. I don't see them for 3 to 6 months. And then I see them out on the trails and they look incredible. Yeah. They're leaner. They're fitter. They're stronger looking. They're riding their bikes more. And that encourages. Sometimes it's just like gets them out of the slump that they're in. And when they start seeing, it'll make them feel good too. So the better you feel, then the more likely you are to want to pursue good things and go out and get on your mountain bike and chase your friends around the forest. And maybe it'll encourage you to do a little bit more exercise because you see the benefits of it faster. So it's an interesting topic. And again, I've never taken anything like that for performance enhancement. I've taken some creatine and I take a little bit of protein powder and some vitamins, lots of vitamin C, and try and look after myself as best I can. I mean, if I was going to do anything, I'd go get some stem cells in my neck and the rest of my body, which is, falling apart, as you guys know. But yeah, I don't know. I think that, I don't know, I've had people say, oh, I used to jump on TRT and do this, but, like, I'm pretty fit. I do okay for my old body. And I don't really, I mean, sometimes if I've trained a lot and I'm overtraining, then it's only when I'm overtraining that I wish that I had something like that so that I could do all the training and recover and not overtrain. So again, no real benefit to me. The overtraining, I start getting cranky, I start getting tired, I don't sleep very well. Like, I understand the signs of overtraining. So that's a way of my body saying, hey, you're doing too much. I recognize the signals. I tone my training down as best I can, eat a little bit more, and get back into a good rhythm. So if I went on TRT or something like that, I think it'd be pretty obvious. my body would grow enormously. I'd be super jacked. I'd be training 24 hours a day. And I don't think that would be good in the long term for my old broken body. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And obviously don't compete in anything. And if ever I was considering that and doing something about it, then I would probably do a little vlog about it because it'd be really interesting. Yeah, I got nothing to hide. It's all good. Anyway, all the best. And in summary, I don't think there's any solution to curbing drug taking in sport. If people are going to do it, they're going to do it. The people with less finances who are really driven are the ones that are more likely to get caught because they don't have all the financial backing and science and doctors and everything behind them. But at the highest level, you're just not going to, it's going to be very rare if you catch anybody. Anyway, have a great day, get on the mat, and yeah, thanks for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. If you've got anything you'd like me to talk about, my own experiences or anything else, or any videos you'd like done, then just yell out. I'm happy to do it. Cheers, guys. Bye.